when the royal microphones accidentally picked up a hushed exchange in the palace corridors, no one expected what would come next. Queen Camilla, unaware she was being recorded, leaned in and whispered a chilling command regarding Meghan Markle. The footage was buried until now. What exactly did she say, and why has it sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace? You're about to witness the unraveling of a secret no one was meant to hear. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. At first, it was dismissed as another rumor drifting through the endless fog of palace gossip. An anonymous post appeared on a closed royal staff forum late one night, written by someone who claimed they had heard something they were never meant to hear. No names, no proof, just a single, unsettling sentence. The Queen was recorded. Within hours, the post vanished. But by then, screenshots were already circulating in private group chats among former aides, security contractors, and junior courtiers who had learned long ago that the most dangerous truths inside the palace rarely arrive with official seals. Whispers grew louder when a second message surfaced, this time more precise. It described Queen Camilla motioning two senior staff members away from a public corridor and into a narrow side passage near the private offices. The writer claimed it was a routine movement at first, nothing unusual, nothing dramatic. But what followed, they insisted, was not routine at all. A discreet security audio device, installed months earlier after a separate internal breach, had been left active. It was meant to capture environmental noise, not royal conversation. Yet that afternoon it caught everything. Those who later heard the recording described a sudden shift in the air. Camilla's voice, usually controlled and polished, dropped into something colder, sharper. A whisper, yes, but not a gentle one. A whisper that cut. The kind that doesn't invite discussion, only obedience. According to multiple leaks, the staff members froze. One reportedly stiffened so suddenly it was noticed even on the silent footage. Another tilted their head, as if silently asking whether they had heard her correctly, because the words that followed were not open to interpretation. Shut her access down. Quietly, 4 words, no raised voice, no visible anger, just command. And the name that followed, never officially released but consistently confirmed in every version of the story, was Meghan. Inside palace circles, the phrase detonated. Access meant more than schedules or guest lists. It meant channels of communication. It meant informal backdoors to influence. It meant the invisible privileges that allow someone to remain tethered to royal gravity, even after they have stepped away. To shut that down quietly suggested a strategy. A slow suffocation rather than an open confrontation. And immediately, speculation ignited that this order was connected to Meghan's rumored upcoming visit, one that, according to insiders, had already unsettled several royal offices. What made the moment even more disturbing was not only what was said, but how it was received. The staff members did not argue. They did not ask for clarification. They simply nodded, and in that small, silent gesture, many who later heard about it claimed they felt something far heavier than scandal. They felt the machinery of the monarchy moving unseen toward a single target. A realization spread that this whisper was not an emotional slip. It was an instruction, and once that possibility took hold, it became impossible to ignore the deeper question forming beneath the shock. What had pushed Queen Camilla to this point? What pressure, what history, what private battles had been simmering long enough to erupt in a single, lethal sentence? But before we dissect the exact consequences of Camilla's whispered order, we must understand the mounting tension that led her to such a ruthless moment. They were never allies, but few knew just how deep the frost ran between Queen Camilla and Meghan Markle. Behind the ceremonial smiles and photo ops, a war had been brewing. Whispers of sabotage, icy dinners, and missing invitations point to a rivalry that became too toxic to hide. From the very moment Meghan stepped into royal life, Camilla's disapproval lingered just beneath the surface. While the public marveled at the American Duchess's charm and media magnetism, behind closed doors, Camilla reportedly expressed serious reservations. Sources close to the inner circle alleged that Camilla quietly referred to Meghan as unfit for the crown, casting doubt on her intentions, her conduct, and even her capacity to endure the relentless demands of royalty. This wasn't about titles, it was about control. Camilla, who had fought her own bloody battle for acceptance, saw Meghan not as an asset, but as a potential disruptor to the delicate structure she had helped shape. From the shadows, as Meghan attempted to carve a space for herself, her refusal to blindly conform to rigid royal expectations ignited a smoldering tension. Camilla viewed the Duchess's resistance to protocol not as courage, but as rebellion. When Meghan opted to speak directly to press officials rather than channel requests through the palace hierarchy, Camilla took it as a personal affront. And when Meghan openly voiced concerns about being sidelined, Camilla allegedly moved to isolate her further. Senior royal advisors who once briefed Meghan were suddenly unavailable. GS were mysteriously rescheduled or outright cancelled. Subtle sabotage, yes, but effective. The strain escalated as Meghan's popularity grew overseas. Camilla, fiercely protective of her newfound status as queen consort, saw Meghan's media momentum as a threat to the monarchy's pecking order. The final fracture, however, came after the infamous Oprah interview. While the entire institution reeled, Camilla was reportedly livid, believing Meghan had shattered decades of carefully managed silence. She viewed the televised confessional as an act of war, and her retaliation became silent but swift. Those in the palace speak of an invisible wall constructed overnight. Staff were warned to keep correspondence minimal. Instructions clashed. Loyalty lines were tested. Employees found themselves trapped between two powerful women, each wielding different kinds of influence but both determined to define the narrative. The internal culture began to fracture. Rumors of staff resignations, emotional breakdowns, and whispered complaint of moral distress filtered through the walls of the palace. What had once been a passive rivalry had turned into an active, consuming power struggle. Meghan's presence no longer just stirred controversy, it became a lightning rod for every unspoken resentment within the palace hierarchy. And at the heart of it stood Camilla, steady and simmering, waiting for the moment to assert final control. But something in recent weeks had pushed Camilla to her limit. A private royal file Meghan had requested might have triggered the Queen's fury. Days before the whisper scandal erupted, Meghan's legal team made a move that shook the very foundation of palace secrecy. In a formal but sharply worded letter, they submitted a request to access archived communications between King Charles, Queen Camilla, and senior palace press officers dating back to 2018. The timing was no coincidence. The content? Shrouded in mystery, but insiders claimed the moment that request landed, alarms were triggered in multiple royal offices. For Camilla, it wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a direct threat to the carefully guarded version of events she had spent years crafting. What Meghan was truly after remained unclear, but speculation ran rampant. Some believed she was preparing a legal strike, not just to defend her name, but to prove, once and for all, that a coordinated effort had been made to brief against her from within the palace walls. Others said she was after one document in particular, a memo from 2019 detailing a media strategy meeting where Meghan's name had been central to the agenda. It allegedly discussed how to restore Camilla's public image by quietly shifting press focus toward divisive narratives surrounding the Sussexes. If true, that document alone could shatter the palace's denials of behind-the-scenes manipulation. Camilla's office didn't hesitate. The request was immediately flagged as an escalating security concern. A private memo as issued within hours, warning of the potential fallout should certain files become public. One royal aide, speaking on condition of anonymity, confided to a former palace staff that some of the material could irreparably compromise the Queen's image. It wasn't just about public perception, it was about control, about legacy, and about the fear that decades of tightly managed reputation could unravel with one click of an email. Archive whispers soon emerged that Meghan's legal team had already seen enough to draw blood. In hushed conversations across legal circles, there were references to time-stamped emails and approved talking points given to favored tabloids. Meghan, according to sources, wasn't just seeking answers, she was preparing to force accountability. The strategy was clear: expose the palace's shadow campaign and let the public decide who had truly played the victim. Camilla responded with ferocity. An emergency meeting was held in her private office, and within 24 hours, the entire archive was sealed. Access was revoked, passwords were changed, and all future requests redirected to a specialized royal legal unit. It was an unprecedented move, one not seen since the days of Diana's most explosive press battles. The message was loud and clear: these files would not see the light of day, and yet it was already too late, because the mere act of sealing the archive confirmed what Meghan had suspected all along, that there was something worth hiding. Tensions skyrocketed within the palace. Staff became tight-lipped, schedules shifted, security protocols were revised, and somewhere within that building, Queen Camilla's patience snapped. Then came the moment that changed everything. A hushed corridor, a recording no one was meant to hear, and a command that hinted at a dark royal tactic. Two senior staff members known for their loyalty to the crown were caught off guard by what they heard. One allegedly went pale. The other tried to leave the palace that very night. For the first time, palace staff became the accidental witnesses to a brewing royal scandal they couldn't ignore. These weren't junior aides or temp hires. Both had served the monarchy through decades of change, one even holding a position within the late Queen Elizabeth's trusted personal household. They had signed confidentiality agreements that were meant to last a lifetime, documents crafted specifically to shield the crown from whispers, accidents, and unsanctioned disclosures. Yet what they heard that afternoon wasn't just alarming. It was history being rewritten in real time. According to palace sources, the moment Queen Camilla gave the order, her voice, cold, surgical, and final, it was as if the walls themselves stopped breathing. The silence that followed was more revealing than the words themselves. Initially, neither staffer dared to speak. Their expressions were caught on CCTV, stunned, expressionless, locked in that strange, frozen state between duty. Retains? Who else had been silenced? This wasn't the palace of Queen Elizabeth anymore. This was a court running hot with suspicion and desperation. And as tensions mounted, it became clear that what had once been a single whispered sentence was about to become a national reckoning. The footage did remain buried for long. A mysterious envelope delivered to a journalist's flat contained the damning audio and triggered a royal media firestorm. In the dead of night, the recording was delivered anonymously to a journalist known for breaking royal stories. The audio was raw, undeniable. A snippet surfaced online, hashtags erupted, and the palace was thrown into crisis mode. Camilla's whisper had become a roar across the world. No warning, no signature, just a plain envelope slipped under a door in central London with a flash drive and a single handwritten note: "You need to hear this." The journalist, known for a history of exposing royal double-dealings, played the file once and froze. It wasn't just scandalous, it was real. The Queen's voice, crisp, icy, laced with authority. The words unmistakable, shut her access down. Quietly, it was the smoking gun. And within hours, a heavily redacted version strategically clipped to maintain deniability but clear enough to verify made its way online. The reaction was immediate and volcanic. The hashtags were merciless. What did Camilla say? The royal whisper, shudder down, trended across more than 30 countries. Influencers, voyeuristes, and conspiracy theorists tore into every syllable of the leaked clip, matching vocal tones, cross-referencing palace schedules, and speculating about the context. But it was the public sentiment that stung the hardest. Memes turned Camilla's phrase into a weapon. International headlines ran with it. Even late-night talk shows couldn't resist. In a matter of hours, the Queen's whispered sentence was louder than anything the palace had ever officially declared. Inside Buckingham Palace, panic surged. The communications team entered full lockdown, phones buzzing through the night as they scrambled to draft emergency statements, contain further leaks, and trace the source. But the damage was done. The world didn't need confirmation the audio had spoken. Camilla's defenders tried to spin the narrative, claiming misinterpretation or fabrication. But sound engineers, lip readers, and even AI forensic analysts weighed in to confirm what millions already believed. This wasn't edited. It was real. While Meghan's camp stayed eerily silent in public palace, insiders whispered that she was devastated behind closed doors. This wasn't just another tabloid headline. This was confirmation that efforts to marginalize her had come from the highest level. Friends said she felt betrayed, vindicated, and overwhelmed all at once. But her silence only fueled the fire. Supporters praised her restraint. Critics questioned her next move. Meanwhile, the institution that had once banished her now found itself at the mercy of her truth. And then there was Charles. The king, often portrayed as cautious and calculated, was anything but calm. Reports swirled that he was incandescent with rage not only over the content of the leak, but over the failure to contain it. Royal aides were interrogated. Security systems were reviewed. Trust evaporated overnight. Some claimed Camilla blamed a traitor within the ranks, convinced that someone close had orchestrated her downfall from within. Others whispered that the Queen wasn't concerned about the leak itself, but about what might come next if Meghan decided to speak. But what happened behind palace walls after the leak was even more unsettling, especially when King Charles confronted Camilla in a meeting no one was supposed to know about. King Charles, usually calm and composed, was seen storming into it became about power, about legacy, and about how far each was willing to go to protect their vision of the crown. Camilla argued that the monarchy must remain ruthless to survive. Charles pushed back with frustration, insisting that silence and suppression were what had destroyed the institution's reputation before, and doing it again would only confirm every accusation ever made against them. The debate raged late into the night, echoing through hallways meant for diplomacy, not confrontation. At one point, Camilla reportedly turned her back, walking out of the room and leaving the king alone with the tapes, with the scandal, and with the crushing realization that he no longer had full control over the direction of his own reign. He stood not as a ruler, but as a man watching his house fracture beneath him. Aides who overheard fragments of the confrontation later whispered, "Something broke that day." And they didn't mean the monarchy, they meant the marriage the palace tried to keep. The encounter under wraps, but too many eyes had seen, too many ears had heard. A new fracture line had been drawn, not between monarch and outsider, but within the throne itself. And even as the dust tried to settle, another storm was quietly brewing, one not from within the palace walls, but from across the sea. And while the royal couple faced internal collapse, Meghan was preparing her own move, one that would take the entire institution by surprise. While silence lingered for her camp, Meghan penned a private letter, its contents so explosive, insiders called it a nuclear option. The letter was addressed to King Charles, but its real target was clear: Camilla. And when its contents leaked, it sent the monarchy into a tailspin. It wasn't loud, it wasn't public, but it was precise. Meghan's letter arrived on royal stationery, ironic, considering how many had tried to erase her from that very lineage. Calm in tone but devastating in content, the document laid out 5 years of suppressed truths, each line laced with timelines, names, and details that only someone on the inside could possess. It was more than a personal account, it was an indictment. Meghan laid bare her experience with relentless accuracy, pointing directly at Camilla as a central figure in what she described as a calculated and targeted smear campaign. Every accusation came with a date, every implication with a consequence. She wasn't asking for revenge, she was demanding reckoning. Buried within the letter was a conditional offer, a private resolution. Meghan was willing to halt further action, willing to keep the rest of the audio, and whatever documents her legal team had uncovered from public release. But there was a price. The palace would have to acknowledge the Whisper incident, not publicly, but internally. Acknowledgement, accountability, and assurance it would never happen again. To men, it was about reclaiming dignity. To the monarchy, it was a ticking bomb, and then something unexpected. Surrounded by whispers not of power, but of disgrace, her influence over court politics waned, and key royal advisers began distancing themselves. One senior courtier even called it, "Her reign is fractured." What began as a whisper in a hallway had now ignited an unrelenting storm. Camilla's calendar, once packed with engagements, receptions, and influential appearances, began to thin in ways too suspicious to ignore. Events were reassigned quietly but deliberately. Royal duties she once led were handed off to other members of the family. Some were given to lower-ranking royals, others, most notably, to Catherine. It was a silent rebuke, and behind the palace gates, staff started submitting transfer requests, some even requesting early retirement. These were not fleeting administrative reshuffles. These were signs of internal collapse. Even Camilla's most loyal aides were stepping back, unsure if standing beside her would soon mean falling with her. The tension bled into the corridors of power. Camilla, once a shadowy force who operated through whispered influence and strategic silence, was no longer being consulted in the same rooms. Meetings she was expected to attend were suddenly rescheduled or concluded without her. Reports swirled that Charles had begun shielding her from certain briefings, especially those related to media relations and future succession planning. The trust between them had not just been shaken, it had cracked. And in the middle of it all, a single symbolic gesture deepened the rift. Catherine, Prince of Wales, reportedly declined an invitation to a private reconciliation lunch with Camilla. No public explanation was given, but inside the palace the mayors are in control. But just when the scandal seemed to reach its limit, a new twist emerged, one buried deep within royal archives, tied to the late Queen's forgotten journal. A forgotten journal belonging to Queen Elizabeth resurfaced, containing handwritten reflections about Meghan, Camilla, and the future of the crown. Hidden for years in Windsor's private library, the Queen's final thoughts may change everything the public believed about loyalty, legacy, and royal succession. It was never meant to be found, not yet. The discovery was almost accidental, buried beneath sealed correspondence. Personal notes in an archive box marked only with the Queen's initials. A royal archivist tasked with cataloguing historical material for the Windsor Legacy Project, stumbled upon a velvet-bound journal, its pages filled with ink that had not seen light in decades. Within it lay something neither the palace nor the public expected, a raw, unfiltered window into the Queen's private reflections during the most turbulent years of her reign's final chapter. And there, written in her unmistakable script, was a line that would haunt the palace. She brings storm and sunlight. Camilla brings shadow. The sentence was brief, but the weight it carried was seismic. In a monarchy obsessed with precision and silence, this was poetry laced with judgment. It revealed something the public had only speculated for years, that the late Queen may have harbored deep, unspoken concerns about the very woman who would one day wear her crown. More than that, it confirmed she had seen Meghan not just as a challenge, but as a force of change, a woman capable of igniting discomfort, but also one capable of illuminating paths the firm had long refused to tread. As archivists read further, more pages revealed deeper anxieties. Elizabeth expressed fears that if Meghan were not embraced, not protected, not understood, the institution would fracture from within. One passage hinted at her desire for a generational bridge to be built, warning that neglecting such responsibility would invite collapse disguised as tradition. These weren't political words. They were the intimate lamentations of a monarch watching history repeat itself, unsure if her family had the strength to break the cycle. The journal's existence sparked immediate debate within the palace. Should it be released? Should it be destroyed? Some senior royals argued it was too dangerous, too personal, too open. Others believed it was the closure the monarchy and the world needed. Leaks about the entries made their way into the press, igniting a cultural reckoning. Royal commentators, who had once vilified Meghan, began walking back their